Nvidia shares pulling back today. The AI market darling falling further from that record high that it reached not too long ago. Our next guest, though, isn't worried about the bumpy path that we have seen for Nvidia over the last several weeks. He's got a buy rating on the stock, the highest price target on the street. We want to bring in Hans Mosesmann. He is Rosenblatt Securities, a senior research analyst. It's great to have you here. So when you take a look at what has been certainly a volatile couple of weeks for Nvidia, some of that sell side pressure on the stock, why isn't that worrisome to you?
Well, we're entering new territory for Nvidia. The valuation really out of thin air almost over the past year. The move has been such that it has people kind of worried, like, how's that even possible? And it requires you to have an understanding of what's going on with AI and their leadership position. So it could be a little bumpy, but from a secular perspective, for the next 10 years, this is going to be the way to play AI. They're at another level. And I think people have to just get used to that. And they're not a semiconductor company anymore. They're a platform. They're all things AI.
And Hans, I'm assuming if you're bullish on Nvidia too, Hans, you must be also then bullish on just the bigger mega trend of AI that you must think, yes, it is this paradigm shift. And yes, Jensen Huang is right when he talks about, how the next industrial revolution has begun, Hans.
Yeah, that's right. So there are a couple of moving parts. And so the cloud, which is where most of Nvidia's business is not going to be the home of all things AI. As time goes on, more AI gets done, not up there in the cloud, but in the mid-edge, the far edge, and it opens up the door for more efficient solutions in terms of platform, hardware, and even software. So there are other players that will benefit from that transition, such as AMD, such as ARM, a little company called Lattice that we cover. So there's other participants, but in terms of the value capture of AI, Nvidia may lose unit market share, but they may actually gain value because they're monetizing the entire stack. That's the entire rack, the entire software that goes around that. So it's a formidable model that I think people have yet to kind of fully grasp.
Hans, what you just said a minute ago there, that Nvidia is no longer just a chip maker, it's all things AI. That has actually captured the attention of regulators around the world. And earlier this week, we got the Reuters report out that actually France is looking Nvidia is setting potentially facing some antitrust charges there in France. I'm curious to you just how you're assessing that risk from an analyst perspective and to what extent this could ultimately be a headwind here for the stock.
Yeah, I think that NVIDIA competitors and NVIDIA observers and countries get worried about a company that is grasping or capturing all of this value. So there is a knee-jerk reaction in some cases to stop that. They've already endured the U.S. basically with these restrictions on China. 25% of the business is basically gone, and they're still basically sold out. So it's something to watch. But they are not being predatory in the least, even though prices have been moving up. It's not the price of the chip or the board or the rack that is driving this business. It's the value created by the total cost of ownership. It's a different metric that we in the semiconductor industry are not used to, right? You can double the price of this product and it provides significant TCO, performance per watt, per cubic foot, per dollar advantages that nobody can meet, right? It's not like there's another guy that can do it. Maybe AMD captures some share here, but it's a little different. But yes, it's something to monitor. In France is something that kind of raises eyebrows and so on. But at the moment, I don't think it's going to lead to anything because they're being fair in terms of how they price their products, in my opinion.
Hans, as you know, Jensen is building out this platform. As he expands, Hans, he moves into new areas, new verticals. Are there companies that you think should be worried?
Well, so the traditional way of doing things in silicon are changing. So that the let's call it the general purpose server market is being really destroyed in terms of value by moving to an accelerated cycle. So, guys like Intel and even AMD, if AMD didn't have a GPU, for example, they'd be in big trouble. So they are changing the way compute is done. And so the next wave of value capture for NVIDIA, if you look at, say, the cloud, for example, are networking areas, storage areas, And so you start to kind of bring in those areas in terms of value, and you maximize the interface between networking and storage with the computer, the accelerated compute. So I think that the traditional networking players and storage players probably have to deal with this. There are ways to get around that. For example, Broadcom and Marvell, which are big players in networking, they have the ability to do custom chips. And so some of the hyperscalers don't want to use NVIDIA all the time. They want to do their own custom, highly efficient, very expensive accelerators. And so there's another kind of theme that is counter to that. But it is interesting how, if you look at NVIDIA's roadmap, how they expect to capture not just the GPU, the compute, but the entire rack and everything that goes inside a rack and a data center.
Hans, there's been more and more talk about some of the competitors within this space. Even when you take a look at Micron, that has certainly gotten a lot of attention here. I'm curious just what you think of that comparison. And then more specifically, some of that price action that we've seen on Micron since its earnings report. What is the street missing that you see given your bullish thesis there?
So my top two picks for this year are the ones that have kind of underperformed here a bit of late, AMD and Micron. So Micron is an enabler. They're not a competitor to NVIDIA. So Micron provides very useful and fundamental memory, be it DDR5, which is more commoditized, or this new high bandwidth memory, which the industry is currently constrained, probably sold out for the next year, maybe year and a half. So NVIDIA needs Micron and Samsung and Hynix to bolster their production, get their yields right. AMD is more of a competitor and coming from nowhere. And AMD is being helped by hyperscalers and Broadcom and some of the networking guys. As you can see, an emerging battle of the titans where a lot of the industry, hyperscalers, chip companies, which feel threatened by NVIDIA, are kind of teaming up to do battle with what I would call, like a Godzilla-like personality here with NVIDIA, the green monster, if you will. So that's kind of how things are playing out. It'll be a battle that will last a long, long time, but I think NVIDIA has the advantage here. Over time, you can think of this as an Apple with the iPhone and that ecosystem doing battle with Android. They kind of coexist, but that's how I think it could play out.
Hans, great having you on the show today. Thanks for making time for us.
You got it.